The cursor blinks. It has been blinking for 11 seconds while Priya Vasantakumar stares at the sentence she just wrote and decides whether it is honest. Human pain tolerance under acute physical stress demonstrates significant variance from baseline mammalian. She deletes the last 4 words and types. Exceeds all current predictive models by a margin the Commission has declined to quantify pending further field data. Better. Amara would say it was still too soft, but Amara always said that. Amara had been saying that for 11 years, and for 11 years Priya had been revising, and somewhere in the space between those two positions lived the most accurate documentation in the Galactic Catalogue. That was the job. The screen reads, Entry 7803, Homo sapiens, Terran. Status, in progress. She is on section 14 of 22. The section is titled, Pain Response and Neurological Stress Adaptation. She has been in the middle of it for 3 months, because every time she sits down to finish it, she finds another study, another field report, another anomaly in the data that requires another pass. The human entry is the last major entry left from the Commission's founding survey. It is also, by a significant margin, the most complicated document she has ever tried to write. She has catalogued 43 apex predators. She wrote each of those entries in less time than she has spent on this one section. She takes a sip of her coffee. The break room on the Commission floor of Catalogue Station Meridian 7 stocks coffee from 6 worlds. There is Veth Spore Brew, which smells like clean rain and tastes like wet concrete. There is Garathi Fermentation Blend, which is technically not coffee and is technically psychoactive at certain altitudes, and which the Commission officially does not serve, but which someone keeps putting in the third cabinet from the left. There is Dreth Mineral Suspension, Ketharin Root Distillate, something from the Pelleran exchange that the label describes only as warm, and in the very back of the bottom shelf, a bag of Earth Blend Dark Roast that Priya brought from home 7 months ago and has been quietly rationing ever since. She is the only person on the station who drinks it. This does not bother her. From the adjacent workstation, 3 feet to her left, she can hear Mirella clicking through translation overlays. Mirella is working on the Veth continuance entry, the third dialect expansion Priya assigned to her last month, which Mirella had volunteered for without being asked, and completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule, and then, apparently, started doing again in 2 additional dialects, just because she thought the existing translations were stylistically inconsistent. That was Mirella, 19 years old in equivalent human terms, a Veth national who had renounced her citizenship designation and her Hive Node affiliation, and walked into the Commission's intake office on a cord station with a translation portfolio and a letter of intent that was 13 pages long. She had asked formally to be reassigned from Mirella Veth 7, her continuance node designation, to simply Mirella. The Commission had processed the request in 4 weeks. Priya had processed it in 48 hours by going directly to the director's office and explaining that losing this particular translator would be the single most expensive administrative decision the Commission had made in 5 years. Amara had told her afterward that she wasn't supposed to do that. Priya had said, I know. Amara had said, do it again if you need to. That was also Amara. At the far end of the observation corridor, past the long row of terminal stations and the specimen prep benches and the wall of pressurized atmosphere canisters marked with their species codes and hazard classifications, there is a viewport. It is 2 meters wide and 1 meter tall, and it looks out over gas giant Cathara 4 in its slow, enormous orbit, ochre and rust, and deep violet in bands that have been cycling since before any species in the Meridian Accord first looked up at the sky. The gas giant does not care about the catalogue. It does not care about treaties or entries or the 43 years it took to build this station. It turns, that's all. Enormous and indifferent and, in the way of very large old things, somehow peaceful. Dio Adeyemi has pressed his face against the viewport glass. He is 12 years old. He has his father's jawline and his own entirely separate quality of stillness, the kind children only get when they are looking at something that has genuinely stopped them. His father, Kola Adeyemi, works maintenance on the subdeck systems. Not worked. Works. Present tense. He is on shift right now, 3 decks below. running diagnostics on the cryogenic preservation lines because 2 of them have been running warm for a week, and the commission's biological specimens do not tolerate warm. Dio is on the observation floor because his father's shift runs late, and the commission floor has better viewport access and better snacks, and because Priya has never once in her life told a child they couldn't look at a gas giant through a good window. "Does Earth look like that?" Dio asks. He doesn't look away from the glass when he asks it. "From space, I mean. Does it look like that?" Priya considers the question seriously because she considers most questions seriously, and because Dio is 12, and 12-year-olds can tell the difference between being taken seriously and being handled. "No," she says. "Earth is smaller, more blue. Cathara-4 is mostly hydrogen. Earth there's more texture to it, more color variety. But it's big? Relative to what's standing on it? Yes." He thinks about this. The gas giant turns. "I've never seen it," he says. "I was born on station." Priya opens her mouth to respond. Behind her, she hears footsteps she has heard every day for 11 years. Amara's particular gait, slightly uneven on the left from an old knee injury she'd never had properly treated. The specific rhythm of someone who is always moving toward something rather than away from it. "You're burying the lead," Amara says. She is reading over Priya's shoulder. She does this without asking. She has always done this. In 11 years, Priya has never once told her to stop. It's accurate. It's accurate, and it sounds like a budget committee summary. Write it like you'd want someone to read it before they did something stupid. Amara pats her shoulder once. Warm, solid. The kind of contact that means I trust you to get this right. "I'm going to finish the pain tolerance cross-reference data in the morning. You've been staring at that section for 3 months. Sleep on it." "I'll finish it tonight." "You'll stare at it tonight." There's a difference. Amara is already turning back toward her own desk. Her workspace is 15 feet away, angled toward the specimen processing station. She likes being able to see the canisters from where she sits, she once told Priya, because it reminds her that the data is always connected to something real, something that breathes or breathed, or had its atmosphere carefully bottled and labeled and stored. "Come find me if you actually finish it." That is the last sentence Amara Osi speaks to her. What Priya will remember later is the sound of it, not the words, the tone. "Come find me if you actually finish it." 11 years of that tone. Every inflection mapped. Every shade of dry affection. She will not remember anything extraordinary about the moment. She will remember it as ordinary. She will remember it as a Tuesday. The first shot does not sound like a shot. It sounds like a pressure door slamming on a distant deck. A fast, hard percussion, followed by nothing. Priya's brain files it under maintenance issue and returns to section 14. The second shot sounds like a shot. She is on her feet before she has consciously decided to stand. 12 years of knowing that particular sound in her muscle memory, dormant and patient, and then suddenly not dormant at all. Her hands are already moving, pushing back from the terminal, turning toward the viewport, toward Dio, toward the boy who is still pressed against the glass because he has not yet placed the sound. She is across the room in 4 strides. "Dio!" She takes his shoulder and she does not shout because shouting in the first 30 seconds accomplishes nothing except telling anyone listening where you are. "With me. Now. Subdeck 3, Specimen Vault B. Run directly there. Tell Mirella to go." She looks at him long enough to know he has heard her. His eyes are wide, but they are tracking. "Good. Go." He goes. She turns toward Mirella, who is already standing, already looking toward the corridor. Veth hearing is marginally better than human in certain frequency ranges, and Mirella has heard something that concerns her, and the look on her face is the look of someone who has spent years hoping she will never have to place a specific sound, and has just placed it. "Vault B," Priya says. "Lock it from inside. The code is 7714 on the internal panel. Don't open for anything except my voice." "Priya, go." Mirella goes. Priya walks to Amara's desk. She knows before she arrives. She has cataloged 43 apex predators, and every one of them has a kill mechanism. And she knows what a kill mechanism sounds like when it has been used. Amara is face down on her keyboard, and the screen in front of her is still glowing, and the cursor is still blinking in the middle of a word. Characteristics of Terran circulatory stress response include elevated catecholamine prod. And the word is unfinished, and the thought is unfinished. And 11 years of Amara Osi's particular quality of moving toward things has been ended by something that came through the door before the diplomatic alert system had time to trigger. Priya stands at the desk for exactly 3 seconds. She is counting. 1. She registers what she is looking at and lets herself register it completely, because the alternative is to not finish the registration and carry an open circuit in her chest for the rest of whatever happens next, and open circuits are dangerous in the field. She catalogs this the way she catalogs everything. Amara. Gone. 11 years. Filed. 2. She reaches past Amara's shoulder and closes the human entry file. The cursor stops blinking. 3. She opens the Veth continuance entry. She reads for 45 seconds. Page 7 first. Respiratory vulnerability. Oxygen enrichment above 28% concentration. Onset of neurological degradation within 4 minutes of sustained exposure. She has written this sentence herself. She knows every word of it. She continues to the next relevant section because 45 seconds is not a long time, and she uses all of it. Then she closes the terminal, takes her Leica field scanner from the charging cradle on Amara's desk. Because her own is in section 14, and Amara's is closer, and there is no difference, the commission issues the same model, the same database loaded on every unit, and she starts moving. The break room is still lit. She left it that way. This is the first thing she considers. Moving through the ceiling access panel above the maintenance corridor. Atmosphere, light, territorial markers. The Veth continuance has, in the 42 years the Commission has maintained a catalog entry on them, never encountered a species that used its own environment as a weapon in close quarters. Their tactics are mass suppression. Gas dispersal systems designed for corridors and open platforms, sonic disruptors for crowd incapacitation, coordinated unit movements that require open sight lines and stable ground. They are very good at these things. They are so good at these things that they have not needed to develop protocols for fighting something that has read their catalog entry. The break room below her has the thermos canister of Earth Blend coffee still on the counter, lid slightly loose the way she always leaves it, heat sensor on the brewing unit reading active because she did not turn it off when she left. It smells like coffee. It is the most ordinary room on the station. She has been in the ceiling panel for 4 minutes when she hears the patrol, 3 unit. She can tell by footfall, the specific 6-beat rhythm of Veth locomotion in their ground contact exoskeletal configuration. Slightly heavier on the left pair, which means at least one of them is carrying equipment in a lateral weight configuration, which is consistent with suppression kit. They move through the corridor with the specific efficiency of a species that has done this many times and found it unremarkable. They stop at the break room. She can hear them communicating through their node link, which is a subvocal frequency that carries through walls because the station's walls are designed for oxygen retention, not signal suppression. She cannot understand the words. She doesn't need to. She has the entry. She has already built the device. She built it in 3 minutes in the ceiling of the storage alcove adjacent to the break room, using 4 items: a pressurized atmosphere canister, pulled from the emergency storage rack mounted inside the ceiling panel. This one marked Veth baseline atmosphere, toxic to Terran biology, which she had checked and confirmed, and which was, by definition, Veth air at optimal concentration, harmless to them specifically as an inhalant. A cryogenic nitrogen bleed connector she had removed from the sub-ceiling preservation line using the connector wrench she carries in her sample kit. A Nalgene specimen extraction probe she had used to puncture the valve seal on the atmosphere canister in a precise, controlled bleed, and a DeWalt conduit crimping tool from the maintenance locker she had passed on her way to the ceiling panel, which she used to set the bleed rate and bind the canister to the nitrogen line with a length of 3M specimen transport tape. The nitrogen line runs cold. The Veth baseline atmosphere, bleeding slow and steady through the punctured valve, mixed with a sudden drop in temperature at the point of release. enters the ventilation intake that feeds the break room at a rate that took her 40 seconds to calculate using the station's airflow schematics. Schematics she has memorized because she learned, in the Corps of Engineers, that the people who know how a system breathes are the people who survive when the system stops working. Page 12 of the VETH entry. Her own words. Thermal shock to respiratory spiracles causes temporary paralytic spasm of the spiracle musculature. Duration, 4 to 7 minutes. No lasting physiological damage recorded at temperatures above -12 degrees Celsius. Below that threshold, permanent damage is possible. She has set the bleed rate for a surface temperature of approximately -8. She drops the bound canister assembly into the ventilation intake above the break room. She counts. At 4 seconds, she hears the first VETH soldier drop. The sound is specific. The full-body exoskeletal contact with a hard floor, all 6 limbs losing tension simultaneously, the particular flat percussion of an insectoid frame that has stopped holding itself up. At 6 seconds, the second. The third takes 9 seconds, which means the third was either farther from the intake or had a more resistant spiracle response. She makes a note of this. Data is data. She drops through the ceiling panel. She has 5 minutes, give or take, and she spends 90 seconds of them studying the sonic disruptor she takes from the nearest soldier. Power cell, full charge. Frequency dial, set to Terran disruption range, which means whoever briefed this unit knew enough about human neurology to be dangerous, but not enough to have read past the first 3 sections of an entry that was never completed. She adjusts the frequency to a lower disruption band, less immediately incapacitating, but the recoil is substantially reduced, which matters for her left hand. She holds it in her right, tests the grip, adjusts. Her Leica scanner is in her left hand. She has not put it down. The first radio transmission crackles through the unit's communication relay. She can't understand the language, but the scanner can, and it translates with a 2-second lag. Command, this is Purge Unit Sol 7. The Terran researchers are attempting concealment in upper station. No organized resistance encountered. Estimated clearance time, 40 minutes. These creatures do not fight. Proceeding. She listens to this. Then she moves toward the xenobiology lab. The xenobiology lab is her lab. She has worked in it for 11 years. She knows where every sample is stored, at what temperature, under what containment classification, with what handling protocol. She knows the precise location of the emergency bypass panel that was installed incorrectly during the station's 3rd renovation, slightly offset from its marked position, accessible if you know to push left instead of right, because she reported the offset to maintenance twice and both times. Maintenance said they'd get to it and both times they didn't. And she eventually just memorized the correct position and moved on. She has approximately 12 minutes before the second patrol reaches this level. She spends them working. The Dreth contact neurotoxin is in the locked sample refrigerator under the eastern bench. Catalog reference DX114, 10 ml vials in a rack of 12. She removes 2 vials. She opens the specimen pipette drawer, sterile single-use, standard issue, and selects a broad application tip. The Dreth entry was the 41st entry she filed personally. The neurotoxin section took her 2 weeks to complete, because the mechanism of action in species with distributed nervous system nodes was genuinely novel, and she wanted to get it right. She got it right. The entry notes specifically that DX114 causes instantaneous sensory overload in nervous systems organized around multiple distributed processing nodes, resulting in a full system seizure equivalent response within 2 seconds of dermal contact. Duration, 8 to 12 minutes depending on body mass. No known antidote required. The compound breaks down spontaneously. Effective across all cataloged insectoid-adjacent species due to the shared evolutionary architecture of distributed ganglia. The VETH continuance is an insectoid-adjacent species. She applies 2 ml. She measures this exactly because precision costs nothing and sloppiness costs everything, to the handrails of the corridor section outside the laboratory door. She uses the specimen pipette. She does not touch the handrails directly. When she is finished, she wipes the pipette, discards it in the hazard waste container, removes the sample vials to the secondary refrigerator, and goes to the atmospheric isolation control panel on the east wall. She sets the lab's internal atmosphere to 18% oxygen with a balance of inert gases. Survivable for her. Deeply disorienting for any species whose respiratory system requires higher oxygen partial pressure, including Veth. She is not planning to be in the lab when the second patrol arrives, but she wants them to have options that lead them through the corridor or into the lab, and she wants neither option to work out for them. She is through the emergency bypass panel, push left, not right, the way she is known for 3 years. Before she hears them enter the corridor, she does not stay to watch. She has the scanner. She checks the biosign markers she logged for Mirella and Dio 30 minutes ago. Both present, Vault B, Subdeck 3, which means they are exactly where she told them to go, which means she has one less thing to track. She hears the second patrol beginning to go down. The scanner translates the radio transmission fragment as it comes through. Command, Unit Sol 9, requesting backup on Subdeck 2. We have... Something is wrong with the lab corridor. Unit members are down. There is a Terran in the station that is... Command, the Terran is not behaving according to assessment. Requesting clarification on Terran combat capability. Our entry does not... Static. She is already moving toward the gravity control panel. The upper deck of Meridian 7 runs at 1.3 G standard for the specimen collection maintained there. Heavy gravity biome samples from 3 cataloged worlds that cannot be stored at Terran standard gravity without degrading. The control panel is in a maintenance alcove on the upper deck access corridor, which means she has to take the secondary lift, which means she has to cross 40 meters of open corridor at standard gravity before she reaches the panel, and 40 meters of open corridor is not ideal when she is now the station's designated threat class target, which she expects the next radio transmission to confirm. She runs the 40 meters in the specific way she has learned to run through uncertain corridors since the Corps of Engineers. Low, fast, pauses at each junction, sight lines checked in sequence rather than simultaneously, because the human eye under stress is faster at sequential targets than simultaneous, and there is no reason to let biology work against her when she can work with it instead. She reaches the panel in 4 minutes. The gravity control on Meridian 7 is a zone-based system. She isolates upper deck gravity, the forward research section, 4 connected corridors, and sets a pulse cycle. 1.3 G for 90 seconds, drop to 0.4 G for 90 seconds, back to 1.3 G. This is not a setting the panel's original designers intended for use as a weapon. The panel does not know that. It simply does what she tells it. Veth exoskeletal physiology is calibrated for consistent gravitational load. The exoskeleton itself, the external structural framework that serves the same function as an internal skeleton in most species, is load-bearing at a fixed rate. When the load changes rapidly and repeatedly, the joints that manage that load, the intersegmental connections at the hip and knee analog positions, undergo what the catalog entry describes as gravitational shear response, a spasm of the load-bearing musculature that, in extreme cases, causes the joints to lock. The targeting systems installed in Veth military equipment are similarly calibrated to stable gravity, because the Veth have never had cause to fight in variable gravity environments. Variable gravity is not something they have had to account for. She has. She completed field certification in variable gravity environments during her 2nd year with the Commission, a mandatory 3-day course for all personnel working with non-standard specimen environments, run at a training facility on a chord station in a rotating ring section. She had scored in the 94th percentile. At the time, she had thought this was a skill she would use primarily for specimen handling. She moves through the upper deck for 11 minutes. She is not graceful. Her left arm is beginning to ache in the way that deep tissue responds to sustained adrenaline. A dull, warning ache that she has felt before, during the Corps, and she knows what it means, and she files it under things that are not currently actionable and continues. When the 3rd radio transmission comes through, she is in the upper deck access corridor, between the 3rd and 4th zone junctions, and she has 3 Veth units accounted for in her scanner's biosign map and is looking for the 4th. This is Commander Veth Prime. All purge units. The Terran researcher is to be considered a threat class target. I repeat, threat class. She is using our own catalog data. She knows our entry. All units, change approach vectors. Do not move through corridors. Do not touch station surfaces. And someone tell me how a scientist is doing this. She listens to this. She does not answer, because there is no mechanism for answering, and because the answer is not something she would give them anyway. What she is doing, which is not a mystery to her if it is apparently a mystery to Commander Veth Prime, is her job. She has been doing her job for 11 years. The entire content of that job is knowing what every species in the Meridian Accord requires, tolerates, fears, and cannot survive. The weapons she is deploying are not weapons she invented. They are observations she recorded. Every compound she has used, every environmental manipulation she has set in motion, every calculation she has run, it came from the database she has spent 11 years building entry by entry, one assessed species at a time. The catalog is not just a record. It has never been just a record. It is the most comprehensive threat assessment in the history of the galaxy, compiled by civilian scientists who spent their careers asking how every species works, because they believed understanding was better than fear. She believed that too. She still believes it. She is also at this moment using it to survive because the people who taught her to believe it are dead on their workstation floors, and the child she is responsible for is locked in a vault 2 decks below her, and her closest friend's last act was a sentence she didn't get to finish. The 4th Veth unit finds her in the open stretch between junctions 3 and 4. They have changed approach vectors per the commander's instruction, which means they have come from above, through a maintenance crawl she had not accounted for because the maintenance crawl is not on the standard station schematic. It is only on the updated version, and the updated version is from 6 months ago, and she has not updated her mental model of the station in 6 months, and that is a mistake. And she registers it and files it, and continues doing what she is doing. In the same instant the sonic disruptor round hits her left arm. The round strikes her at the forearm just below the elbow, at the partially fused joint of her ring and pinky fingers. What happens to her left radius in the next half second is not subtle. She hears it, not from outside, but from inside, the specific deep resonance crack that travels up through bone before the pain signal has time to complete its journey from impact to cortex. There is a white-hot sheet of sensation from her elbow to her shoulder, then her brain, which has been running at 189 BPM for the last 40 minutes, and is operating on catecholamine levels that have routed every non-essential process to secondary status, does what it was already doing, and routes around the signal. This is the section she was writing. Section 14. She wrote exactly half of it, pain gating under survival stress conditions. She said it out loud in the xenobiology lab, 3 minutes earlier, alone with her broken arm and her scanner and the Veth unit going down in the corridor. I wrote that. Guess I should have finished the paper. She changes the disruptor to her right hand. She braces her left arm against the conduit pipe running along the wall and uses the contact pressure as a reference point for where her elbow is, because with the nerve signals rerouted, she needs proprioceptive input from an external source to know where that arm exists in space. She continues. The 4th unit does not continue. She reaches the atmospheric control room at the end of the upper deck access corridor 40 minutes after the first shot, walking, not running, because her legs have begun to communicate to her that they have been running intervals in variable gravity for 11 minutes, and their opinion of what happens next is increasingly negative. She does not have time for their opinion. The atmospheric control system for Meridian 7 manages airflow across every zone on the station: pressure, composition, temperature, volume. It is designed for species safety. Oxygen levels are maintained within survivable ranges for the station's mixed species population at all times. There is a reason the system is designed this way. She is about to use the system in a way that does not reflect that design intent. She navigates to docking port 4, the port the Veth continuance used under a survey vessel flag, to board the station 42 minutes ago, because she pulled the docking log from the backup node while she was in the break room ceiling, because she planned to do this then and simply did not have time, and she has kept it in her working memory until now. The docking port corridor is the only exit point for the remaining Veth ground units. She knows this because she has the station schematic in her head, and because the scanner shows her 11 Veth biosigns distributed across 3 deck levels, all of them moving in the general direction of the docking port, because units that have had their approach vectors changed twice by a single Terran researcher are units that are reassessing the viability of their current operation. They should be. She sets the oxygen concentration in the docking port corridor to 31%. This is above the standard upper safety limit of 28%, but below the combustion threshold. The Veth neurological degradation she documented on page 7 of their entry begins at sustained 28% and becomes significant at 30%. She sets it at 31% because she is precise about these things. She sets a 6-minute timer on the atmospheric release because 6 minutes is enough time for the units currently moving toward the port to reach it and not enough time for the first effects to fully reverse before they are contained. Then she sits down. Her legs, it turns out, had a point. She sits on the floor of the atmospheric control room back against the wall, scanner in her right hand. Her left arm is in her lap. She can feel her heartbeat in it, which is a specific quality of awareness she has had before, during the core, and which she remembers means the fracture is real and the swelling has started. She is aware of a smell. The oxygen recyclers are running at elevated output, and the station's air processors have a faint baseline smell of machine function, metal and recycled warmth, and something that is almost but not quite the smell of raw cotton and machine oil from the floor of her mother's textile mill in Coimbatore. It is not the same. It is close enough that her nervous system files it in the same place and she lets it. She thinks about the bridge briefly, the sound of the water, the silence after, the quality of a silence when you have done everything you can, and you are sitting in the aftermath waiting to find out whether it was enough. She was 23 the first time she felt that silence. She had told herself after that she would not put herself in a position to feel it again. That hadn't worked out. The beacon she triggered from the backup comm node, 40 minutes into the engagement, is a standard commission distress signal, automated, with her species ID and the station's coordinates appended. Accord emergency response is 12 minutes out at standard approach. She checked the math when she sent it. She is good at math. She opens the scanner with her right thumb and navigates to the station's backup database node. She opens the human entry file. The cursor is blinking. She thinks about what Amara said. Write it like you'd want someone to read it before they did something stupid. She picks up the scanner and begins to type. Right-handed, slowly, in the voice she has used for every entry she has ever filed. Plain, precise, without embellishment. The way her father taught her to write the irrigation data, making sure the record reflected exactly what was true. She writes section 14 with a broken arm on the floor of the atmospheric control room of a station that has just attempted to contain her, and the data she writes is accurate, and the conclusions she draws are based on evidence, and the entry is, when the Accord emergency response crew finds her 47 minutes later, complete. The crew that enters Meridian 7 through docking port 2 is expecting a rescue operation in an active siege. They find silence. What they find in the silence, and this is the part that takes longest to explain in the incident report, because none of them have a reference category for it, is not chaos. The corridors are clear. The surviving Veth units are incapacitated, not dead, contained in positions that correspond, they will realize later, to the specific areas of the station where each of their relevant vulnerabilities could be most precisely applied. The specimen canisters are not scattered. They are placed with a precision that one of the Accord peacekeepers will describe as deliberate geometry, at positions that suggest something had a plan and executed it. At 2 corridor junctions, there are handwritten labels. They are written in standard galactic script, in Priya's handwriting, on pieces of specimen transport tape pressed to the wall. They have arrows. They say, in sequence NW, atmospheric, and S, vault check. She left herself navigation markers mid-battle because she was navigating a complex environment with a broken arm and multiple concurrent environmental hazards, and she is not too proud to write things down. The Garathi medic who finds her in the atmospheric control room runs his scanner twice. He is quiet for a long moment. Her radius is fractured in 2 places, he says to the peacekeeper beside him. He says it quietly, the way people speak when they are trying to categorize something that is resisting categorization. She has a blood loss index of 34%. Her pain hormone levels are, I don't have a reference range for this species. He scans again. Her motor function should have ceased. Her cardiovascular system is, I don't know what her cardiovascular system thinks it's doing, but it's doing it on purpose. Whatever this species is, it does not stop because it is hurt. It stops when it decides to. He looks at Priya. He is about to say something medical and specific about her immediate care requirements. Priya opens her eyes. Entry's not finished, she says. Then she closes them. 9 days later, she wakes in a medical bay on Accord Station Vithara Neutral. The first thing she notices is the cast on her left arm, which is the specific pale green of Commission Standard Regenerative Medical Wrap, and which has been applied with considerably more precision than she expected, which means whoever treated the fracture was both competent and careful. The second thing she notices is the light, which is softer than Meridian 7's overhead panels, and which has been adjusted to a lower spectrum, warm rather than clinical. The third thing she notices is her Leica field scanner, placed on the bedside surface to her right at exactly the angle her right hand reaches when she stretches without thinking. She does not know who put it there. She picks it up. The battery reads 12%. She plugs in the charge cable that has been left beside it. Also, she notes, at exactly the right position, and reads the notifications. 47 incoming messages from the Commission, 1 from Director Halveth personally, 14 from media outlets she does not recognize, 3 from the Indian High Commission, which surprises her, and 2 from an office she does not immediately place, and then she places it. The Galactic Council's Special Inquiry Division, 1 from Dio, which says only OK, which is the most information-dense message she has received in 9 days. 1 from Morella, which is 2 paragraphs long and contains at the very end the sentence, I have been translating the human entry into 4 additional dialects while you were unconscious. I hope that was all right. She reads that one twice. Then she reads the session schedule for the Accord emergency session, which began 4 days ago in the Accord diplomatic chambers on this station, and she reads the delegate roster and she finds the name she is looking for. Envoy Prime Colethus. Diplomatic Representative Veth Continuance. He has been speaking for 4 days. She reads the transcript. He is precise and he is thorough and he is, she notes, not incorrect about the mechanics. Protocol 7 of the Meridian Accord does permit containment action against unregistered species in shared space. The human catalog entry was, at the time of the strike, incomplete. The Veth Continuance has a treaty-based argument that is structurally sound. His opening statement includes the word tragedy twice, and both times the word is doing exactly what she expected it to do, absorbing the weight of 47 deaths without accepting the liability for them. On day 1, she reads, he said, the Terran was a data clerk. What your catalog calls resistance was the instinctual response of an unassessed animal in a corner. It should not be mistaken for capability. She reads that 3 times. Then she gets out of bed, gets dressed, gray trousers, plain dark shirt, the same clothes she kept in her station locker for 11 years because she has never seen a reason to vary the formula, and she finds the session chamber. The chamber is arranged in the Commission's standard diplomatic configuration. A central table, 12 delegate stations in a horseshoe, the Commission administrator at the far end. The administrator has been arguing procedure for 4 days and has not made progress, which Priya could have told him would happen, because the Veth Continuance does not respond to procedure. They respond to documentation. She sits down. She sets her scanner on the table. The case is scuffed on the lower left corner. It has been scuffed since a specimen collection expedition on the 5th moon of Dreth 7 4 years ago, and the screen shows the Commission database, and the human entry is open. Envoy Prime Colethus looks at her across the table. He has the specific quality of stillness that very confident people have when they are about to say something they expect to end a conversation. She looks back at him. She has catalogued 43 apex predators. None of them, when she met them, knew they were in a room with one. She begins. You acted on an incomplete entry, she says. I understand that. The entry was incomplete because Dr. Amara Ose was writing it when your soldiers shot her. She had been at that desk for 11 years. She was at entry 7803. She was in the middle of a word. The chamber is quiet. I finished it, Filed it 6 hours ago from the medical bay with my right hand, because my left arm was busy being broken. It's complete now, fully assessed, all 22 sections. She does not look around the room. She looks at Calethus. You can read it if you want. I wrote the pain tolerance section myself. A delegate from the Garathi contingent, she notices in her peripheral vision, has opened their terminal. Others are following. She lets them. I want to be clear about something, Envoy Prime. I am not here to ask for consequences. The Accord processes will manage that, or they won't, and either way, it doesn't change what I'm going to do next. What I'm going to do next is go back to Catalog Station Meridian 7, as soon as it's structurally cleared, and finish the work of 47 staff members who spent their careers making sure species like yours were documented fairly, completely, without judgment. That's what I do. I am a cataloger. I catalog things. She pauses. But I want you to understand something before I leave this room. She turns the scanner to face him. On the screen is the Veth continuance entry. It is the version she filed 2 years ago. Complete, 24 sections, every vulnerability and physiological characteristic and neurological quirk documented with the same precision she has brought to all 214 species in her personal record. At the bottom, below section 24, there is a new subsection. It is labeled, in the standard catalog format, Additional Assessor Notes, filed in supplementary session, post-incident. Assessor, P. Vasantakumar, Senior Field Xenobiologist, Commission Record, 7590. She says quietly, I know your entry better than your own commanders do. I wrote it. Take whatever time you need to think about what that means. She stands. She picks up her scanner. She does not look back. Envoy Prime Calethus, who has not been silent once in 4 days, says nothing. He reaches forward and rotates the scanner toward himself. His mandibles, which in Veth physiology close tight under conditions of significant stress, close. The Garathi delegate, who is also reading the entry on their own terminal, looks up at the commission administrator. The administrator looks back at them. Nobody says anything. She is already at the door. Mirella is in the corridor. She is wearing a commission visitor badge, which means she has been cleared through the station's access control as a non-delegate observer. She has been there, Priya will learn later, for 2 days, waiting in the corridor outside the session chamber, with the specific patience of someone who has spent 19 equivalent years of their life waiting for documentation to catch up with reality, and has learned that the waiting is simply part of the work. She doesn't speak. She takes Priya's right hand in both of hers and holds it. Priya stops walking. She looks at Mirella, this young Veth woman who chose her own name as an act of will, who walked away from a hive node and a designation and a military civilization that had decided what she was before she had finished becoming it, who had volunteered for every translation task without being asked, and come in early and stayed late and asked careful questions about species she had never met, and treated every catalog entry like it mattered because it did, because they all did, because documentation is how you make the invisible visible, and the invisible are always someone. And she thinks about Amara, who had done exactly the same thing 11 years ago, who had handed her bad coffee and a filing system and told her she was going to be good at this, in the tone of someone who was not expressing hope, but stating a fact. She doesn't cry. There is a time for that, and this is not yet it, but the time is coming, and she will let it come when it does. For now, she just stands there, in the corridor, holding Mirella's hands. Then footsteps come from around the corner, fast, uneven, 12 years old, the specific gait of someone who has been sitting still for a long time and has reached the end of their patience with sitting still. Dayo Adeyemi comes around the corner at a run. He stops when he sees her. He has grown, she thinks, though it has only been 9 days. Or she is simply seeing him differently. He is 12 years old. He was born on station, orbiting a gas giant he had never seen from the outside until he pressed his face against a viewport and asked her if Earth looked the same. He opens his mouth. Don't say, "Are we going back?" she says. He closes his mouth, then he opens it again. Are we going back? Give me 30 seconds, kid. He subsides. Mirella makes a small sound that might in Veth physiology be the equivalent of a laugh. Priya looks at Mirella. She thinks about 47 unfinished entries. About a cursor blinking on a screen in an empty room. About the work that remains, which is always the work that remains, because the galaxy is full of species that have not yet been seen clearly, documented honestly, understood, and there is a database that has been built by 11 years of her life, and 47 other lifetimes worth of patient attention, and it is not finished, and it will not be finished in her lifetime, and she is going back to it anyway. We've got work to finish, she says. The Accord session records show that the human delegation's final official statement, submitted in writing to the Commission Secretariat 3 days after Priya Vasantakumar left the chamber, was 4 words. The entry is complete. Beneath it, appended in the standard catalog conclusion format, was the final line of entry 7803. The sentence Amara Ose had been writing when the Veth continuance ended her career and her coffee, and her 11 years of patient documentation at a workstation that still smelled faintly of earth-blend dark roast. The line read in plain taxonomic language without embellishment exactly as filed, threat classification, pending further data. Assessor. Note, do not rush this one. The Galactic Council read it in silence. All 17 attending species read it in silence. In 400 years of the Meridian Accord and its predecessor bodies, the Council has read a great many catalog entries. It has read entries for creatures that breathe methane, and creatures that communicate in seismic pulses, and creatures that reproduce by spore dispersal, and creatures whose lifespan exceeds the Accord itself. It has never in 400 years needed to sit quietly with a catalog entry for as long as it sat with this one. Nobody rushed it.